Alright, so how would you go about in any of the 3 original Spyro games move any object you want to whichever position you want without needing to use any code? So here I'm using a tool called SpyroEdit. It can do a lot of cool stuff, but I'm gonna use it to identify objects in the level. You can find it if you use Google for it. It comes with some installation instructions how to set it up. And all you really got to do is just walk up to some object. Let's say we want to move this gem over here. If I click on find nearby objects, I'll find 3 objects nearby right now. I know it's one of these 2 because they are type 1. Type 1s are gems. So let's say we took this object here, 194. And just try to move it somewhere. This is going to move it far, but it turns out this object here is this gem. Next thing you want to do is to change this over to hex values, and I'm going to open down something to write this down in. But you're going to want to write these down, but a little bit backwards. For example, here this thing is going to be 48 F2 0000. And this thing here becomes 29 70 0000. And then the same thing with the last one as well. Once you have that, you are gonna have to use a hex editor. I'm just gonna get the first one I googled online because you can just use an online one. And in this one, I clicked open file and shows the bin file, the exact same bin file you used that you opened in the emulators. So I'm having the Riptus Rage bin file here. And it's just gonna look like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab these hex values I just got and type them in here. And I am not gonna type them in here, I mean I'm gonna type them in here. And choose to hexadecimal over here and list all occurrences. Because this is fairly unique, because it's just so many exact numbers that needs to be the same in a row. This one is only gonna find one instance, which is over here. So I know that this in the game is the position of this particular gem. So if I were to change these values to different hex values for a different coordinates and save this, then the game that's gonna launch with the changed hex file is just gonna have this at a different position. So let's say I wanted to move this gem over to be over here. So this tool comes with this nice thing that I can also check the player position. So I know that where I'm standing right now is these values. So let's say I instead would type in these values here and turn them into hex, which I'm gonna do here real quick. Then if I moved over a bit and decided to move the gem over here, you're gonna see that I may decide that, oh yeah, this is where I want to place this particular gem. Then what I'm gonna do is turn this into hex again and write them up as well. And then I'm gonna go back to here and replace these values with these values. So if I were to save this now and then launch this bin file in an emulator instead, that game is gonna have this gem over here instead. This way of finding things is gonna work to find about maybe 80% of all objects in a level. But it's not gonna work to find every object, and it can be a few different reasons why you would not be able to find an object in the hex editor. The first reason is fairly simple, and it's just that a lot of objects actually have gravity. So when you enter a level, this gem, okay, this particular gem is probably here, but like a lot of gems would likely, instead of being placed there, actually be placed something like this instead, and then just by the time you enter the level, they have fallen down. But that still means that this is its real initial position, and those hex values are what you would have to search for to find the gem here. So most of the time it's actually more useful to only search for the x and y value here, and it still is unique enough that even if you were to search for something like this, you likely still will only get one option showing up here. The second reason you may not find an object in the hex editor is because in some other cases, objects actually spawn at a completely different location. Let's say this gem actually spawned, well, I don't know, far away in that direction, but by the time you enter the level, it got teleported to its real position, which is over here. And in that case, there's gonna a completely different ways needed to find out what its real initial position is, but I'm gonna show that in a second. So before that, I still want to mention some other things. First thing is that it's a really good idea to keep track of the changes you add here. Like maybe, for example, find some way to write down in a way that makes it easy for you to keep track of all the changes you have made. Because if you stare at numbers like this for hours, like inevitably you're likely going to make some tiny mistake. And at that point, it can be hard to reverse those changes. But if you keep track and write down all changes you do, it's just going to be easier to like go back and change back the things you will need to. And even if you didn't do a mistake, maybe not everything turns out the way you expected. So it's still good to be able to keep track of everything you have edited. I also want to give a quick mention before moving on to this tool. This is a great modding tool. So let's say you wanted to do more than just move around objects, but actually write some code and make some more advanced changes. Then definitely check out this, because I use this to do some additional changes and it's a great way to do that. If you use this tool, SpyroEdit actually comes with this nice object address as well. So if you don't want to reverse engineer things in more advanced ways, such as Ghidra, I mean, I'm sure you can use stuff like Cheat Engine as well to figure out different ideas. There's many ways to go about it. But you have IDs here for many objects, and this tool here is great. Next, I want to show how to find objects that does not show up in the hex editor. It can happen for some static objects, but also mostly all actual moving objects. So I think this elephant here is a great example, because if we were to walk up to this guy, which I already checked is object 27 here, then obviously right now, if I would access object 27, it shows that the position is this. But as it moves around a bit, it's going to be other values. So what is its actual real initial values then? Because let's say we exit and enter the level here real quick. And now if I access the objects, you can see that every time it shows these values. So you could think then, okay, this is the values that should be turned to hex and searched for here. But if you do that, you're still not going to find it. So this is just like some of the static objects. Sometimes you just will not find it. So we're going to use a different tool to figure out how that works instead. But what we do know is that if we stand here and try to access this object, this is always the x value and this is all the y value, always the y value. So let's grab that for a second and open a different emulator, the BizHockey emulator. It comes with a RAM watch and a RAM search, which are over here. And so let's click new and click specific value and enter the x value that we expect to exist in the game right now for the elephant. Then we find this one, and then let's do the same thing for the y value. Then we find this one. I discovered if the level is exited and entered here instead, as we always have access to these values wherever we are, then this is actually going to show the true initial value as we enter the level before the elephant is teleported to its real place. So now, of course, it's just something random because we are not in the level anymore and the address points to something else. But let's enter the level again. And for a brief moment here, you're gonna see it shows something different, like this, and now this. So the thing that showed when I said this first is that's the real initial values. Those are the ones you want to turn into hex values and search for here. So anything you didn't find in the way I showed initially, you can just find using this way instead. And if you get multiple options here and you aren't sure which one it is, you can always just search for their values, again using these tools. It's very similar to Sheet Engine if you've ever heard of it before, or other RAM search tools. And that's it, I guess. Of course, this works for all 3 original Spyro games, not just the second Spyro. And don't forget that other tools exist as well, such as this one if you want to write code and do more things than just moving objects. But at this point you probably need, well, you do need some coding knowledge at this point. But yeah, that's it.